With our collective attention spans having never been shorter and an abundance of entertainment available at our fingertips, we generally want what we watch to be short and we want it to be bloody good. So you could do a lot worse than check out some of these sub 5-minute offerings from WWE, contests that may have been brief but pack a hell of a punch in the tit. I've already lost you, haven't I? You clicked off the video and now you've opened TikTok, haven't you? Goddamn goldfish. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are the 10 best WWE matches under 5 minutes. Join us! Number 10, the Hardy Boyz vs Edge and Christian at King of the Ring 1999. There wasn't too much to celebrate at King of the Ring 1999, a major misfire during one of WWE's hottest ever periods. The matches were mostly poor and the booking left a lot to be desired, but a quartet of young up-and-comers looking to make an impact provided one of the show's few bright spots. Edge and Christian clashed with the Hardy Boyz in one of their first ever meetings, with a future shot at the WWE Tag Team titles up for grabs. Adding to the pressure, this was Matt and Jeff's pay-per-view debut. The tournament matches meant the card clocked in at a beefy 10 bouts, with the two teams being tasked with getting the job done in under 5 minutes. They would have better, longer matches fought under a range of stipulations in the months and years that followed, but this was a nice glimpse into the future of WWE's doubles division. The highlight was Edge hitting Jeff with a mid-air spear as he attempted poetry in motion, though the younger Hardy was able to rally and get the win with a twist of fate. Number 9, the Ultimate Warrior vs the Honky Tonk Man at SummerSlam 1988. The Honky Tonk Man was originally scheduled to defend his Intercontinental title against Brutus Beefcake at SummerSlam 1988, before Ron Bass and his trusty steel spurs bloodied up the barber and took him out of commission. Then, enjoying a record-setting run with the IC belt, the wannabe Elvis didn't bemoan his lack of known challenger and asked to wrestle anyone instead. He didn't care who it was. The challenge was answered by none other than the Ultimate Warrior, who sprinted to the ring, knocking announcer Howard Finkel off the apron in the process, and proceeded to demolish the Honky Tonk Man in 31 wonderful seconds. A couple of clotheslines, a slam, and a warrior splash later, and the painted hero was our Intercontinental Champion. One of the longest reigns in history had been ended with one of the shortest matches, but fans were clearly far from bothered by the brevity of it all. On the contrary, the Madison Square Garden crowd cheered like nutters for the switch, as happy to see the cocky honky get his comeuppance as they were to see their warrior bag the strap. Number 8, the Kid vs Razor Ramon on Raw. After losing to Doink the Clown and Mr. Hughes on Raw in the weeks before, the Kid proved that the third time was the charm when he scored a monumental and completely shocking victory over Razor Ramon. The odds didn't look good for the Kid, who had lost his previous kamikaze and cannonball prefixes and looked destined for life as a job guy. Most people watching his match with Razor assumed that the bad guy would gobble him up and spit him out like one of his toothpicks in a routine squash match, and that is pretty much how things were shaking out before the Kid managed to evade a charge and hit a moonsault body block for the most improbable victory. It wasn't so much that this was a genuinely incredible match or anything, but the surprise upset really did catch everyone off guard and instantly made Sean Waltman a star. There was no indication that the Kid would win, and he didn't register so much as a single offensive maneuver before the winning one, which is what made it all so brilliant. Number 7, PAIGE vs AJ Lee at SummerSlam 2014. One of the common criticisms leveled towards WWE's handling of their women's division, or Divas division if you want to use the parlance of the time, before the so-called revolution is that the company's fighting females were rarely afforded more than a couple of minutes for their matches. This even extended to title matches on pay-per-view, and as such, it was hard for them, especially when dealing with a bunch of other restrictions, to create something memorable. Two so-called divas who were really before their time, Paige and AJ Lee, managed to have a dandy of a Divas Championship match at SummerSlam 2014. Doing what they could with the 4 minutes and 55 seconds they had to work with, they had a fiery match that certainly benefited from going on second and not in the death spot just before the main event that the Divas were typically put in. Watching these two work with a real purpose and have a match with crowd heat hinted not just at what they could do with more time and effort put into promoting their match, but how WWE was slowly starting to change the perception of women's wrestling within the company before the arrival of the next generation of stars. Number 6, The Undertaker vs Rey Mysterio on SmackDown. When Kurt Angle was put on the shelf following WrestleMania 19, Brock Lesnar was left without a top-tier opponent for the upcoming Backlash pay-per-view. With a lack of credible heels that the next big thing hadn't already worked and beaten on offer, WWE decided to hold a good old-fashioned tournament to determine a #1 contender. The tournament itself was so-so, but the first round threw up at least one very intriguing match on paper: Rey Mysterio versus The Undertaker. With such a massive height, weight and stylistic difference, not to mention a gulf in their position on the card between them, it was fun to watch how they pieced together a believable match. They did the smart thing by keeping it short, 3 minutes and 23 seconds to be exact, and having the masked man fly out of the blocks while attempting to chop Big Evil down. There were some believable near falls with a tornado DDT and 619, but ultimately Mysterio was unable to overcome and fell to the last ride. He may have lost, but he won the dead man's respect for his battling effort, and isn't that really the same thing as winning in the end? The answer is no, he lost. Number 5, Kurt Angle versus TAZZ at Royal Rumble 2000. Look, TAZZ's WWE career may have been in the main a complete disheartening washout, but he will always have his Royal Rumble 2000 debut. Coming out as the surprise opponent of the then undefeated Kurt Angle, even if half the MSG crowd had sussed out the former ECW champion was the mystery man, TAZZ received a thunderous response from his hometown faithful. Things started fast and furiously, with the human suplex machine backdropping the Olympic hero over the top rope before being taken down with a suplex on the concrete. TAZZ rallied and hit a few tasty suplexes of his own, including one off the top rope and one that turned Kurt inside out before hooking on the TAZZ mission for a technical submission victory. Packing an awful lot into their 3 minutes and 16 seconds, both men were allowed to show off their stuff and TAZZ got a big win on his first night in. And the finish also gave Angle an out, as he would happily tell anyone who listened that he was choked out and didn't tap out, and that the TAZZ mission was an illegal move, hence he stayed undefeated. Number 4, Kurt Angle versus Brian Kendrick on SmackDown. It must be hard trying to tell a compelling story in the time it takes to drink a cup of coffee, but luckily for Kurt Angle and Brian Kendrick on the February 27th, 2003 episode of SmackDown, they had plenty of story already going into their match. Kendrick was trying to win a job on the Blue brand and was told by General Manager Stephanie McMahon that he could have a contract if he could last 5 minutes with the WWE Champion. What unfolded was really just a step above a prolonged squash, with the gold medalist toying with his opponent and Kendrick only getting slithers of a comeback for the first few minutes. However, as the clock ticked down and the champ neglected to put him away, Kendrick almost made him pay by not only hanging on, but valiantly fighting back. The crowd were with him every second of the way too, cheering him on while hoping for the impossible. Sadly though, Spanky wasn't able to last the full 5, though he made Kurt work for it and only succumbed with 2 seconds to spare. Number 3, Rob Van Dam versus Tajiri on Raw. If the invasion did anything good at all, it at least introduced the WWE Universe to Rob Van Dam. The whole flippin' show not only got over and quickly established himself as a star in those first few months, he also seriously elevated the Hardcore title, which he wore and defended with pride. While RVD's pay-per-view defenses against the likes of Jeff Hardy and Chris Jericho are rightly lauded, it should not be forgotten that he also routinely put the title on the line on Raw and SmackDown in a series of short yet thrilling matches. The best of the bunch was his scrap with Tajiri from the July 30th, 2001 episode of Raw, which just happened to take place in ECW's home base of Philadelphia. Mr. Monday Night and the Japanese Buzzsaw certainly had complementing styles, and the Anything Goes rules only helped spur on their creativity. There was good wrestling, some martial arts, a bit of high flying, and plenty of mean chair-based offense. The only negative is that at 4 minutes and 23 seconds in length, it's simply 3 seconds too long because of 420. Get it? RVD? 420? Doobies? What are ya? Freaking knock? Number 2, Owen Hart versus the 1-2-3 Kid at King of the Ring 1994. The King of the Ring tournament is often an event that features a lot of matches on the shorter side, depending on how it's set up. If there are 3 stages of matches on the night of the pay-per-view, for example, it's fair to expect that the majority of those will clock in at under 10 minutes, with many coming in at around the 5-minute mark or under. It can be hard to build up a head of steam in these circumstances, but the ultra-talented Owen Hart and 1-2-3 Kid had no problem in their semi-final outing in 1994. The Rockets set the tone with the evilest baseball slide that ever slid, and things simply didn't let up from there, with the two of them throwing out everything they had in a bout that lasted a breezy 3 minutes and 37 seconds. They went at it non-stop, unleashing suplexes and dives and top rope moves galore, while also managing to incorporate some nice technical wrestling and counters. A breathless sprint, they just about stole the show and showed that less can sometimes be a lot more, even when it comes to time. Number 1, Brock Lesnar vs. Goldberg at WrestleMania 33. At WrestleMania 20, Brock Lesnar and Goldberg stunk out the joint with a jointly shambolic performance in a match that the Madison Square Garden crowd viciously turned on before it even got started. They were out there for just under 14 minutes, but it felt closer to 40 as the dream bout turned into a total nightmare. It was a shame that this Clash of the Titans turned out the way it did, but thankfully they were able to have a redo on the grandest stage 13 years later. This time there would be no stalling or drawn-out lock-up jostling, with Lesnar, never one to be paid by the hour, going on the attack immediately in his attempt to claim the gold. Finisher spam matches may be a little played out at this point, and if I ever see another breaking spot in my life, I will be a happy man, but despite the sense of familiarity, everything here worked perfectly. For a match that was about 85% German suplexes and spears, it never once felt repetitive, and I was properly sports entertained for its entire 4-minute and 45-second duration.